All right, guys, welcome back to part four of this video series about how to be a doctor as an Indian medical graduate in the UK. Today, we're going to be talking about how to find a job when you've got all the necessary things lined up for GMC, when you're all done with that. So, without further ado, Apurva, my question to you today is how do we actually find a job? Are there any websites that we should be checking at? How do we go about it?
Welcome back, everyone. So today's video is going to be a short video. So this is a straightforward process. So I think most of the NHS jobs are advertised in a NHS website exclusively for jobs. So if you type jobs.nhs.co.uk, or if you just type NHS jobs in Google, you'll get a website, and most of the NHS jobs are advertised on it. So you can kind of enter search terms, filter your requirements, and most jobs would come up, and then you can decide where you want to join. So that's essentially how you look for jobs. Other way around is there is also a website by BMJ, the British Medical Journal, on jobs. It is called BMJ Careers. So if you
Okay.
log into that, you can find jobs as well. Essentially, it is the same, but it also includes some international jobs. So it will be the same jobs which are advertised in NHS jobs, which are usually advertised on BMJ jobs as well.
Cool. That's straightforward. So, what about what's the role of these recruitment agencies now? In the past, now I've been through the same route, and many of my colleagues, good friends, they're often, you know, contacted by multiple recruitment agencies.
True.
What's happening here? Do we need to get in touch with them, or can we find a job without being in touch with them? What's easy? What do they actually do for us?
Okay. Uh, there is no right or wrong answer here. So uh, it depends on entirely on you. So if you want to find a job yourself, you can do that. So essentially, if you want to join a specific hospital, if you're already in touch with someone in the hospital or a trust, for example, the HR department of a hospital or any consultant in a hospital, you essentially do not need a middleman or a recruitment agency to help you with the recruitment process. So that's one way of doing it. If you are quite sure about which hospital you want to work in, you can directly contact the HR department of the hospital, or the hospital contact directly. Or if you know somebody in the hospital, a consultant, you can contact them directly, and then they can arrange an interview and recruit you to the hospital directly. That's one way of doing it. So if you still do not want to go through a recruitment agency, if you want to apply through NHS jobs website, you can still do that. You can find the job opening and contact the hospital directly, or apply through the NHS website itself. That's other way of doing it. What the advantage of going through a recruitment agency is that they have, I mean, essentially they give you the list of all the job openings. They can look, if you give them what your preferences are, so they can look jobs that are particularly suitable for you, and they can contact the hospital and arrange an interview for you. They kind of act as a middleman between you and the recruiting trust.
And what do they get out of it? Do they take something from us? Do they get part of our salary, or the hospital pays them? Are there any downsides for the candidates when they come to these agencies?
Okay. So again, lots of people ask this doubt if you need to pay them anything. So the straightforward answer is no. Don't pay anything to the recruitment agencies at all, and they get money from the trust or the hospital recruiting you for obviously recruiting you. So you
Okay.
don't pay anything to the recruitment agencies. So I think there is no complicated process involved. They just makes your job easier by searching suitable jobs for you, actually.
I mean, that's what I would recommend to come through a recruitment agency. The reason is because if this is your first job in another
Yeah,
country
yeah,
and there are too many things going on, your
yeah,
documents, GMC,
yeah,
visa, and sometimes it's difficult to understand the
yeah.
terminologies when
True.
you're moving here for the first time. So
Yeah,
they make the whole process easier.
yeah,
Sometimes they fill in forms for you, and it
yeah.
just makes the whole thing much easier to
Exactly.
do.
They facilitate the
Um,
entire process, and they can kind of look after. what happens when you come here for the first time, your accommodation and initial few days in the UK as well. So unless you, like I said, if you specifically know which hospital you're working in, and if you're already in touch with that hospital, then you obviously don't need a recruitment agency. But otherwise, it's probably slightly easier if you come through a recruitment agency. You asked about the downsides. I don't see any particular downside by going through any particular recruitment agencies. Most of them do essentially the same job, but there might be some individual differences depending upon. I mean, it's mostly person specific differences. If some agency has good staff, then probably that's more easier to communicate with them. But apart from that, I don't see any major downsides to it. The other downside would probably be if you give your contact number to multiple agencies, you'll get bombarded by calls and messages all through the social media, and they will keep
Yeah.
contacting you every day on your phone as well. So I would recommend against it. So if you're going through a recruitment agency, stick on to one recruitment agency. Maybe the best way to find out who is best for you is to speak to your friends and colleagues and see who they have chosen, and then you can get the feedbacks from them as well.
Fine. It's best to select one, like the word of mouth and speaking to your colleagues and
Exactly.
your friends if anybody has been through the same route. Fine.
Yeah.
That sounds good. So how do we actually select a hospital? What are the things that we look for? Is there a website or is there a system where we can check what the hospital rating or grading is?
Yeah. So again, this is slightly complicated question to answer because it depends mainly on individual preferences. So some people may want to work in only cities. Some people would like to work only in London. Some people want to go to the beautiful countrysides of UK. So it depends on so many individual preferences. So essentially, the first thing you need to decide is where you want to work. And some people want to work in a specific trust or a hospital. Some people want to work only in maybe Oxford University Hospital, or they want to just work in Cambridge, or somebody wants to work only in Edinburgh, or somebody want to work somewhere, maybe say St. Mary's in London or any other major trauma center in central London. So it depends where you want to work. Which city, which hospital. If you're not particularly concerned about any of these, and if you want only a good hospital with maybe which is not very busy or maybe slightly less busy, then you can choose that as well. And also, salary depends on your trust, which is recruiting you. So the salary might be slightly different in London. It might be slightly different in a place which is kind of outskirts of a city. It might be slightly higher in the outskirts of the city. So it depends on too many things. So how much salary you're expecting, which place you're working, and what type of hospital you're working. Do you want to work in a major trauma center? Do you want to work in a smaller hospital, which are called district general hospitals? So you can take all of these things into consideration. I know it's again lots of new terminologies, but speaking to people who are working in the UK already might give you a bit of perspective of how things work in different places. Another way of looking, if you, for example, if you're selecting a particular hospital, if you want to check how the hospital is exactly. So maybe again, two ways of looking at it. One is if there is somebody who is already working in that hospital, speak to them. That's obviously the best way to get some information. The other way of getting some more information is there is a body called CQC. It's called Care and Quality Commission. So it's basically something like we have NABH in India, or the international accreditation agency called JCI, which is there in India as well as in USA as well. So it is something similar to that, which kind of reviews and rates hospitals. And if you type hospital name in Google, followed by CQC, you'll go to the official site. And each hospital, after reviewing each department, they give you kind of rating, and they also give full kind of description of how the department is, what's good, what's not so good, and everything about the hospital. I mean, it's not like 100% reliable. There might be kind of a bit of intricacies to the description as well, and it might depend on so many things, but obviously you'll get the overall picture.
I think the best thing is to speak to, if possible, if your recruitment agency can put you in touch with somebody who is in the same hospital, whether
Exactly.
one or multiple hospitals. Speak to them, find out what the rota is like. That's
Yeah.
a big thing. Once you're settled in, you always look at the rota, and then looking at like where you want to move, as you said. If you are single, if you have a family, and looking at your spouse's job, and your if you need a school around, and all
Yeah.
those things. So it's important to speak to people and ask the agency to get in touch, to put you in touch with other people. I think that's one of, again, the advantages of coming through an agency.
True.
Right. My last question is, how is the interview conducted by the hospitals?
So the
Just
interviews
briefly, if you
are,
could just take a minute to explain that.
yeah, so the interviews are generally quite straightforward. So once you decide that you want to go to a specific hospital, you can if you're going directly, you can speak to them about the interview, and they can arrange for a specific date which is comfortable for you, or your recruitment agency can arrange interview. The interviews are usually done over Zoom, MS Teams, or Skype, or any other online platform. So each hospital interviews or trust interviews may be slightly different, but generally the pattern is they might ask you a few clinical questions. Again, not very technical questions. Usually they are general questions. For example, if you are an emergency medicine doctor, so they might ask you something about trauma, some ECG, some fractures, and see how you answer. And then they might ask you a few general questions, and they might ask you what your expectations are, and your experience and stuff. So it doesn't usually last longer than 30 minutes. And once the interview is done, they will let you know about the results in next couple of days. And within, if they are happy with the interview and if they select you, you have to say yes or no within like next 15 to 20 days. You can speak to them and extend it for a couple of days, but it's not a very long time. So usually
Okay.
you'll have to give a yes or no answer to them within like next 15 days, 15 days usually. And if you accept the offer letter, then you are good to go to the next step.
Fine. And also, just quickly pointing out, it's worth reading about the structure of NHS.
Mhm.
It's more of like interview preparation,
True.
terms like clinical audit, clinical
Yeah.
governance, risk stratification, risk management.
Yeah.
It's worth going through that before you go for the interview, but that's more of interview preparation. So we won't go into details of that. And I think that's it. We'll leave it here. Thank you so much, Apurva.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much. If you have any further questions, please drop in the comment box. Thank you.